What up? It's your boy, Dick Incredible Man, and yes, I am back at it again. And this is 911 Season 4, Episode 3. And I apologize for being late. I had some other stuff to do. But boy, oh boy, this episode was nice, man. Let's get into it. This episode was glorious, and it was the lead up to the crossover event, which seems like it's going to all take place in 911 Lone Star. Like, we see it teased throughout this episode in 911, but like it seems like the actual event is going to take place in 911 Lone Star because that's where the fires seem to break out. So I'm going to talk about the cases that we had this episode, and then I'll talk about everything else. So the cases in the premise of this episode was technology. In all of these cases, these people use technology to help them and in the system in their everyday life, but the first two cases, they were used for crimes. For some reason, they used them and then they did not think this through committing these crimes. We have the first chick that is stalking her ex-boyfriend through his smart home network. And let's be real, she almost basically killed him. Like, she called 911, but that doesn't make it better because you're the reason that he almost died in the first place. Sure, he might have mistreated you some type of way or something, I don't know. But from the story, it doesn't really seem like that. It seems like he wanted to break things off and kind of just take a break from her for a while, and that's not what she wanted. So she decided to just mess up everything in his house, just like turn on all the systems, freeze him out, and scorch him in the shower. And dude fell and hit his head. Then she's like, "Oh my gosh!" But like, then she gets on the phone and tells Maddie everything that's going down. And did this not cross her mind that this chick was going to report her? You committed a crime. But anyway, man, it's hilarious. But like, these criminals that took place in these first two cases, it just baffles me. What was their thought process? The dude that robbed the bank. Dude robbed the bank, then used a rideshare service to escape from the bank, and used same said rideshare service in the same driver to escape again. You can't be serious. Like, I mean, I know you may not be the smartest guy in the world, but it doesn't take rocket science to figure out that using a rideshare service is the stupidest thing to escape from a crime. Because, like, unless you know, like, you falsified all of the stuff or anything, but if you use like your actual address and all the other stuff to sign up for it, you shouldn't be running around committing crimes. I'm just saying, that's not smart thinking, man. And the last chick that's doing goat yoga, I immediately guessed at what it was when she was like, "Well, I do yoga," and like I've seen it on a bunch of other episodes and shows and stuff about the goat yoga. It's a thing in LA, right? Goat yoga, but it's crazy. Like, that's how the worms got inside her eye and it made her blind. The chick was like, "You know what? I think I want to do bunny yoga from now on." The cases were hilarious, but they pretty much wrapped up pretty quickly as soon as we saw them on the screen. Like, we saw them on the screen, and pretty much right after that, the cases were wrapped up. Now, dealing with everything else that transpired this episode, we see that Buck finally tells Manny, and he tells Chimney that I'm not seeing anybody, I'm seeing the therapist. Now, we see that as of right now, Buck is really dealing with a lot of stuff. And let's be 100%, if you guys saw my other 911 reviews and stuff, you know how I felt about Buck and Abby. In the beginning, I loved it, but like after she just tore this man's heart out, I hated Abby. And the thing is, because Abby really scarred Buck. And from this episode, we see that Buck he's been lonely for a while now, and he's been going through this whole mix of emotions and everything. And I'm assuming he really didn't want to tell Maddie that he was going to a therapist, but he decided to eventually tell her because she's his sister. But that's something entirely else. I'm gonna get to that later. But he decided to tell her, and we learned this episode that Maddie and Buck both, they got some issues with their parents, man. Because like they say, Maddie said they weren't bad people, they were just bad parents. And from what we gathered from Buck's perspective while he was talking to Chimney, is that like they were there, they hung out with us, they cooked meals, we had family time, but it just always seemed like they were just more involved in themselves than they were us. Like, they didn't really just seem like to care for us. So like, we see that their parents has this whole weird dynamic between Maddie and Buck, and their parents seem like to be in their own little world, and like, do they really care about their kids? But then we see Maddie talking to her mom on the phone, and they have this whole little weird conversation, and Maddie then goes into detail about, we shouldn't keep this secret from Buck anymore. We should just go out and tell. Maybe he should know. And my guess is the secret is that Buck is adopted. I feel like Buck is adopted. That has to be the only option that's on the table, like they've been keeping, right? I mean, I feel like that's the only secret. And we see that Buck is tired of being lonely. He doesn't want to be alone anymore. He's kind of feeling like he doesn't really understand who he is, what he's going through, anything. Buck is having he's having a weird time right now, but he still loves his job. He still loves his friends and his family. He loves everything, but it's just like he's going through something as a person. And I'm actually glad to see him getting the help that he needs. And it showcased this episode, but I'm definitely leaning towards the fact that Buck may be adopted. Then we have Bobby and Athena that they're trying to deal with some stuff with May, because Athena doesn't want May to work in the 911 call center at all, but she can't really tell her to stop because, it kind of got to her a little bit because May said she's doing this to help her mother. And then at the end of the episode, we see that May tried to commit suicide. And that she's been seeing a psychiatrist because she told the 911 operator manager or whatever that she done that and she was going through some stuff and everything. So she just decided to be upfront about it, and she told them. And so I think it's once a month after work, she has to go see a psychiatrist. And I think that's a good thing for her. But we also see that Athena went to a psychiatrist, but like she doesn't go there anymore. And that kind of upset Bobby because May is going, Bobby's going, and dealing with the daily lives of their work. They have these problems and they need to be able to vent and talk to someone about what's going on through their thought process and everything. But Athena felt like she doesn't need that anymore. And not just because what she does at work, but because she went through a traumatic event. And that's what Bobby is trying to hammer into her. And we see that there's kind of a shift between Bobby and Athena at the very ending of this episode compared to the very beginning and everything else that we had prior. Seems like they're kind of, okay. Well, now they're definitely on different pages now. So I can't wait to see how that's going to turn out. We see that Maddie and Chimney finally learned the sex of the baby, which is a girl. And I'm loving their relationship. Like it's reaching a whole new dynamic for both of the characters themselves, because we know that Maddie went through some stuff and we know that Chin has parental issues and everything. So like, well, not Chin, but Chimney, they have these parental issues. So like they both have their own weird family history and background and everything that's going on, but them together as a cohesive unit, it just clicks and works, and it's nice seeing Chimney and Maddie together to work through their whole weird situation that they have from both of their backgrounds. Now, lastly but not least, we deal with Hen this episode. I'm going to talk about Eddie, but let's talk about Hen first. Hen is still trying to be a doctor, which is cool. I mean, you do you. But this episode, we see that she is trying to help this lab partner that's working with her that doesn't seem to quite want her help and kind of looks down on paramedics, and she's just overall just cranky. But at the end of the episode, we see why she's cranky, and her and Hen both have this moment of connectivity, all thanks to Hen finally trying to understand her from talking to Athena and telling her that, well, maybe you should try to find out why she's acting like this, why she's acting this way. And we see that she finds out, and they both kind of lay it all bare on the table. Hen tells her about her being a lesbian, a mother of two, and a full-time job and all of this stuff. So they both have a lot on their plates. And then we learn about Sydney's whole medical drama and her wanting to live past 35 and become a doctor. So like we see that both of these people have their own problems that they were dealing with, and they never really just clicked and synced because neither one of them was trying to listen to the other and understand where they were coming from or what they were going through. And at the end of the episode, we see them kind of going through that to kind of understand what each one has been through and would go through, and kind of see each other on the same level. And that's a nice connection they made at the end, because I mean, face it, you guys are going to be working together. I mean, one of you could obviously flunk out if you choose not to work together. So work together and you can help each other out. And we see that Sydney only disrespected him the way that she did because she felt like she didn't want to be a burden to the team or something like that. It was like she doesn't want to be looked down upon. But in the end, we see that she respected Hen for having a full-time job and being a paramedic. She defaced her a little bit in the beginning, but like at the end, she kind of just, okay, now I see. And then we have Eddie this episode that is flipping out the entire time about technology because of their first call. He was like, I don't want anything to do with technology. We're going old school. And then at the end of the episode, we see Buck send him a coffee pot with a letter from Hildy attached to it. So that was nice. It was comedy. It didn't have too much going on this episode, but it was nice to see Eddie and Christopher this episode. But overall, it was just a nice, fun episode. But then we got to deal with a lot of stuff dealing with it as well. And now we're diving into 911 Lone Star, where we're going to see the crossover event. So stay tuned, because I'm going to go check that out now, man. This is Wordic Incredible. Don't forget to smash the like button till you can't smash it anymore. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them. And subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. And remember that 911 and 911 Lone Star is having a crossover event, man. Let's get it. I cannot complain, because today, I'm doing